Hello and welcome to week 11 of Theories of Personality. And as we enter into chapter 14, we're going into an area that really kind of starts to highlight why I picked this particular textbook to base this course on, is looking at this essential part of the world of psychology in a personality from a multicultural point of view. A lot of my own background, a lot of maybe your background has been Western psychology, which of course has invested lots of research and whatnot. We have great ideas. But other cultures, the individuals that grew up in those cultures had different worldviews, have different worldviews, and they arrive at different conclusions. And so in chapter 14, we're introduced to Far Eastern philosophies, somewhat like religions, that deal with the human personality from the point of view of Buddhism and yoga, to Far Eastern philosophies slash religions that demarcate a path of human development and personality development. And so the course book covers some of these things. Now, I'm going to have to admit that this is a journey that we both are on, and these are not natural philosophies for me, having grown up in a Western culture. I enjoy them. I like them. I practice yoga as an exercise, and I see some universals in here. I see some ideas that all of the world's psychologies touch on. And so I just want to kind of skim through there as we're doing this exploration. I'm not going to profess an expertise in these areas. The person who usually would have taught this class, the Ken Elliott, a colleague of mine and a friend, has retired. And when he taught this class, he taught it from personal experience. He was a practicing Buddhist. And his approach to this would have been, of course, very different. So as we go into this chapter, we're all learning and exposing ourselves to some very different philosophies, but I think we can see the connections. We can see the universal qualities of some of these philosophies. So let's quickly go through the course book here. We start off with a short discussion about the idea of philosophy and religion, and we quickly go into yoga and the different sacred texts that describe the development of the human being in relation to this philosophy. The plan for development within yoga focuses on the self as a dualistic nature of spirit and nature, and all things that are spiritual, and all things that are nature, the principle of karma. And please read into this, because it's a lot more than our Western view of karma, which is, what you get back when what you throw out there is going to come back to you. It is that, but it's a lot more when you look into more details. And we move into the importance of having a guru, which is a guide on and this is probably one of the cool aspects of that bridge between different perspectives, is this idea of having a teacher next to you, a more experienced individual, and for to help, for someone to be there to guide you and to answer questions as you pursue these pathways. Just a very, very cool perspective of that mentorship sort of thing. And we still see some of that, but there's this sense of you can't do this alone. You really need an expert on the side to help you along. And I think there's tremendous value in understanding that and where that rests in your own life. Now, there's they list 5 hindrances, and we in the West can certainly relate to this, as the first being ignorance of the facts, the science, and whatever. Then there's the sense of self, and maybe we look at this as self-centeredness or the ego, not the ego that necessarily Freud talked about, but the ego like me, it's all about me. And that focus on me rather than others and my relationship with others, that is a hindrance to personal growth from this philosophy. Then we have our desires, which distract us from the path, and we We look at addictions, we look at distractions, we look at all these things that keep us from doing what we should be doing. Hate and anger, those things, and then the ultimate impact that has, that's a universal. And then our attachment to things, the idea that transcendence, and maybe the same sort of transcendence that Maslow talked about, it really necessitates that we have to let go of things, let go of our attachments, our emotional attachments to things, because that's a hindrance as well. And then we go into Buddhism, because this chapter talks about yoga and Buddhism. And Buddhism's origins with a real individual, a real historical person, who started that Zen Buddhist sort of philosophy. And a big part of Buddhism is the acceptance that there is suffering and that we need to live in the moment. And our role is to alleviate suffering, but for ourselves, we have this necessity to be in the moment. And this is also an idea that the West is beginning to embrace, or not beginning now, I mean for a long time, the effort to look at this of not thinking too much about the future, not thinking too much about the past, and being in the moment. And I'm sure each one of you listening to this right now can relate as to how that is a very effective approach sometimes to be right here. You're with a friend, or you're just this place in your life, maybe one eye on the prize, but one eye's in front of you, so you don't have to trip over the boulders on your pathway here, and not letting the past drag you back. And this philosophy, a different approach than we might see in psychotherapy, where we kind of talk about and resolve the past, make plans for the future so that we can feel better in the moment. This is sort of a perspective of really using the connection between the spiritual self and the sense of the body, being in the moment, right in time, where you're aware of your sensations, aware of what's going on, aware and very engaged in what you're doing. And I think that's a very powerful philosophy. One of the most important characters in Buddhism, of course, is the Dalai Lama, who is he's still alive. He is the spiritual leader of Tibet, and he was exiled and continues to live in exile. When he was a very young child, he escaped out of Tibet when the Chinese came in and took over Tibet, and he continues to live in exile. And his writings are amazing. And so if you're interested in learning more about him and his writings and peace and philosophy and whatnot, it's a great resource for understanding this other perspective. Now, again, within Buddhism, at the end of the chapter, I go into the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path of Development. And you think about this as the development of your human personality here, getting the right knowledge, having the right intentions, being able to say the right things at the right time, I would imagine, your right conduct, your right livelihood, the right effort, where you focus your energies, mindfulness, and concentration. You think about these things as disciplines. And that, of course, our discipline of when we take personality traits and we discipline them into our everyday actions, there's no separation between that and what we would in other models call personality. So personality being, the regular ways in which we interact with the world. So again, I'm trying to not speak at this like I practice this all the time, but this is a really neat way. And I think a lot of people in the West have found a lot of insight and comfort and illumination by reading the writings of these philosophers. Now, as we go into the discussions, in the discussion, I want you to review the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path outlined in the section in Buddhism, that last thing that I just talked about. And how are those part of your personal developmental path? Where do you see you aligning on each one of those? And then in the quiz, I want you to consider those 5 hindrances, the ones that I'd hate: self, and those things, the ignorance, sense of personality, desire, hate, and a sense of attachment. And how have these, and maybe share in your quiz answer how these things, maybe a couple examples of how one or more of these things has been a hindrance in your development. You've been maybe even too attached to something, or you're nurturing a hatred or a lack of forgiveness or something that's keeping you from moving forward. And maybe this is an opportunity to benefit from putting the magnifying glass on that and saying, maybe that's something I really need to knock out of my life, and so that I can move on. So here we are going into some deeply multicultural areas of personality. It's my, again, I'll repeat, my favorite part of picking this textbook was it goes into culture a lot. I teach sociology and psychology, and I find them very complementary, and they inform each other. And here's definitively cultural perspectives coming into our understanding of personality. So I hope you enjoy these chapters as much as I have, and I'll see you in the discussion boards.